Coming up on Maine Challenge, a talk about the Maine AFL CIO and the strike at Bath Iron Works. Hello and welcome to Maine Challenge, a production of Lincoln County Indivisible and Lincoln County Television. Welcome. And welcome Andy O'Brien, the Communications Director of the Maine AFL CIO. Welcome to our show.
Thanks for having me, Chuck.
Good to see you. Andy and I served together in the Maine legislature for 4 years, maybe?
Yeah, I was in the 4. You did the full 8.
I did the full 8, that's right. And Andy, you are now the communications director at the AFL CIO. And I'm interested, and I think our viewers are interested in what the AFL CIO does today. Obviously, there's a lot of interesting history about the AFL CIO, but I'm especially interested in what's going on today with your organization.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, the Maine AFL CIO is a federation of 160 union locals here in Maine. We represent everybody from shipbuilders at Bath Iron Works, paper mill workers, to teachers and nurses and firefighters, municipal employees. It runs the gamut, electricians, and we basically fight to support working people and support policies that help working people. And so since the COVID-19 pandemic hit Maine, we've been incredibly busy because a lot of our members are frontline workers. A lot of healthcare workers, firefighters, first responders, people who are working on the front lines and often putting their lives at risk. As we know, I think there was a quarter of the COVID cases at one point in Maine were healthcare workers. And so we've been doing a lot to try to push management at these healthcare facilities, as well as our elected officials, to ensure that they have their proper personal protective equipment, or PPE, and so that's been a big part of the work that we have been doing, and that's always ongoing because there have been shortages, as I'm sure a lot of the people watching know. We are also working on a number of policy issues in Washington. As you know, COVID-19 pandemic has really wreaked havoc on our state. Those working, and we're facing really serious budget shortfalls, and so we need funding from the federal government in the stimulus, which Senate Republicans still have not seemed to have got their act together on, and we need that funding to ensure that we keep people working and that the services are there.
To give a little perspective, some will say, and I think I agree, that it was really unionism that built the middle class as we know it, or at least remember it, and outsourcing is really destroying it. Is this good for the U.S.? Is this good? And why do so many people support anti-union Republicans?
Well, I think that globalization has definitely devastated a lot of good manufacturing jobs in Maine and across the U.S. I mean, since NAFTA was signed, we lost 30,000 good union manufacturing jobs in Maine, and I think that it also China entering the WTO in 2000 also impacted that. Automation has also played a big part in that as well. I mean, I think BIW probably at one point had like 7,000 or 10,000 employees, whatever. As automation happens, you need less workers, and so that's been a big part. But really, what's happened over the past 50 years, or even I would argue since Taft-Hartley was signed in 1947, which was a real anti-union piece of legislation that passed a reactionary Congress at that time. Because there were so many strikes, they wanted to really clamp down on the power of working people. And so that's what led to right to work laws in the South, which basically mean that union members can get the benefits of a union but not have to pay dues. And so that really weakened their power. And that's why we saw a lot of jobs go to the South, because the labor was cheaper down there. They didn't have to pay them as much money. And so, you know, we saw a lot of our Maine was a textile powerhouse for many years, going back to the 19th century. In the late 1950s, that started to go to parts of Europe and then Asia. And so that was a big thing. The decline of the forest products industry has just been really devastating to workers in Maine.
Well, that's a tough history, but I'm also thinking in terms of where we are right now, where our Senator Susan Collins and Republicans are proposing to slash unemployment benefits and provide immunity to employers over COVID. Is this something you're fighting as well?
Yeah, we're fighting that tooth and nail right now. That's dominated a lot of the work that I'm doing right now. You know, the unemployment issue is so important to tens of thousands of Mainers right now. We have an unemployment assistance group, which any of your viewers can find on Facebook if you do a search for Maine Unemployment Assistance. And this is a group that is designed to help people filing for unemployment and get answers. And if they're having problems, we help them we assist them with their issues. But more and more, that has morphed into advocating for the extension of the federal pandemic unemployment compensation, which is an extra $600 a week that helps people pay their bills. And so, you know, without that, we have a lot of self-employed people who would only be getting like $146 a week if that goes away. It just expired this week, that extra $600. So people are panicking. We have a lot of people who worked in the hospitality and the restaurant industry, people work in the entertainment industry. I'm sure you know that that's been just a horrible situation, right, Chuck? You know, clubs closing, musicians not being able to perform, sound engineers, you know, can't get work, wedding photographers, weddings are canceled. You know, restaurants are only doing takeout, so they don't need those workers. We even have truck drivers who would pick up the food scraps at the restaurants. They don't have work. I mean, it's just been a dire situation for a lot of these people, and their whole season has just been wiped out by the pandemic. Yeah. And they're not going to recover until this is over.
Right. We're talking about very tough times for a lot of people. And we do have a guest who's a member of Local 6 at BIW who's going to join us in a minute. But I wanted to ask you about one other matter that's close to me and a lot of other people is the Postal Service. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on what viewers and customers of the Postal Service can do.
Well,
it seems to be that the Trump administration seems determined to destroy the Postal Service, and it didn't just start with Trump. No. But how do we save it? I mean, it's in the Constitution.
It is in the Constitution, but they would love to privatize it. I mean, behind all these attacks on the Postal Service right now, and by the way, what's happening is due to the pandemic, the Postal Service is scheduled to go broke next month because they have lost so much revenue due to the pandemic. But this has been a long time coming. Back, and I think in 2006, they passed some cockamamie, ridiculous scheme to require that they fund their pensions up to like 70 years from now, which no other corporation has to do except for the Postal Service. This is designed to defund the Postal Service. And the Postal Service is incredibly important for many reasons. They deliver life-saving medications, ballots, packages to rural areas. You know, some of the private companies, they won't deliver to rural areas, and the Postal Service has to do those last miles. And so, you know, this is such a critical thing that we have. And Trump has a postmaster who's a privatizer. He wants to privatize this Postal Service so they can extract money out of this wildly popular agency. And so what people can do is they can tell our senators, Susan Collins and Angus King, that they need to provide stimulus funding in this next federal stimulus package to save the Postal Service. You know, and on a consumer level, you know, people should be buying stamps. You know, anything helps, but really we need that. I think it's a $25 billion infusion into the Postal Service. You know, we would like 45 million, but you know, that's what passed the House, and we'll take it. And it'll shore up its finances for the time being. So, you know, this people really need to be paying attention to this, because so many people depend on the Postal Service. It's really important jobs program too, for people who are veterans, for women, for people of color. You know, these are good union jobs. We represent many of them, the letter carriers and the postal workers. So yeah, it's a big issue.
One more before we bring in our guest. Medicare for all. Is that a solution for many of the problems that are besetting the unions today?
Yeah, I mean, Maine AFL CIO has endorsed Medicare for all. You know, we're very passionate about that issue because, I mean, number one, it's ridiculous that we're tying people's health care to their employment. You know, we don't tie other things to employment. We don't tie education to employment. We don't say you can't get an education unless you have a job that offers education for your children. It shouldn't be like that for healthcare either. And as we've seen in this pandemic, where millions of people are being laid off, and you know, tens of thousands of Mainers, is that people are losing their health insurance. And you know, going back to the unemployment, this is why we need this extension of the unemployment so people could buy health insurance. But you know, just speaking from a union perspective, the reason why we support you know, having a Medicare for all system is because increasingly healthcare is dominating these negotiations with management. In every contract negotiation, healthcare is front and center because healthcare costs keep going up for everybody. And so if we took healthcare off the bargaining table, we could focus on other things like increasing wages, having better vacations, better pensions, you know, better benefits. You know, and the other thing is that healthcare is something that management can hold over workers' heads. You know, oh, you don't like this offer? Well, what are you going to do? Strike? Then we'll take away your health insurance. And so, you know, they can strike fear into workers. You know, fortunately with the local S6 members is, you know, this was such a rotten deal that was offered to them by Bath Iron Works, and that they were willing to take that risk to lose their health insurance to, you know, ensure that we have quality jobs for future generations down at BIW. But right after the strike was called, you know, General Dynamics, Bath Iron Works cut everybody's health insurance. So everybody had to go and scramble to either purchase it or find Maine care for their kids. You know, it's been tough.
And something tells me that these families that are associated with workers at Bath Iron Works really didn't need this, and they really didn't need it right now. And I think it might be a good time, actually, to bring in our guest, Mike Melville from South Bristol, who is a member of Local 6 at BIW and a ship fitter in the shipyard at Bath Iron Works. Welcome, Mike.
Hi, Chuck. Thanks for having me.
Glad to. Thanks for being here. Have you, in fact, lost your health care by being on strike? Your
Yes,
health
indeed. Yes, we got notice. Since the employer pays a portion of it, it has been ended for all of us.
So the actual policy is gone, not just the coverage.
Well, the coverage certainly is gone. I've asked about things like deductibles that have already been covered. Apparently, that stays in place as long as we come to an agreement, as long as we get a fair contract that we can all agree on.
Any sense, I know you're not on the negotiating team, but is there any sense, or do you have any sense of when we might see a breakthrough?
Well, the company seems to be very reluctant to come to the table. I've not heard any movement on that front. The union has proposals to cover our concerns. And as far as I know, the company has not been willing to come to the table yet.
Mike, and I'd also appreciate Andy's weighing in on this too. Is this strike part of a decades-long battle? At least it seems that way to me, over union authority in the process, but also actual benefits. I mean, is this part of anti-union corporate strategy, or is this simply about the issues on the table in the strike?
I can't speak for BIW, but speaking with some of the old timers, the guys have been there 20, 30, 40 years. Since GD took the place over, contracts have just gotten worse and worse and worse, with the union agreeing to more and more giveaways to keep their jobs. And finally, the union said enough. This last contract, 84% turnout, and 87% said no on the contract and yes on strike. It's a 2/3 threshold for that strike. So the union's fed up. We've drawn a line in the sand, I think, and it's time for BIW to come to the table, give us a fair contract.
Andy O'Brien from the AFL CIO, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the contract, I mean, they're attacking seniority provisions. You know, they want to put people who have worked there for many, many years and put their time in to build those ships. They want to be able to just throw them on night shift if they want to. They want to just put them into another trade that you know that they don't want to do. They're not sued for. You know, they're bringing in non-union subcontractors that are basically to undermine the power of the union there. And since this strike began, they've been putting advertisements out for scab workers down in Alabama and Mississippi. This is exactly what they did in Jay back in 1988, if you remember. That was an incredibly bitter strike. And the president of Bath Iron Works, Dirk Lesko, his father was Newland Lesko, who was the plant manager at Jay, who brought in those scab workers and permanently replaced the striking union members and fired them. And so, you know, this is a calculated strategy to bust a union. And I think everybody should be outraged about this.
When I saw the news item that suggested that one of the big issues in this strike was about the use of subcontractors, my very first thought was, well, there goes the phrase, Bath built is best built, because subcontractors aren't invested. The union workers there are invested in that company, and they have a real role and a real stake in the outcome of the product, which is these pretty amazing pieces of machinery that we call ships. And I just don't, you know, my very first thought was, there goes Bath built, best built. We can throw away that expression. Any thoughts on that, Mike?
You know, you've got generational members, generational employees, 3 and 4 generations in that yard have tremendous pride in the work that they do. I've only been with Bath for a little over a year, year and a half. But you've got guys been there 40, 50 years, 3rd and 4th generation shipbuilders, electricians, all the trades, across generations. It's the part of the very fabric of this area of Maine, of the mid-coast. People come from an hour and a half, 2 hours away to work there every day, one way. They've got to travel to get to a good paying, secure job, which is all up in the air at this point.
Andy.
Yeah, I just want to bring up one other issue is that the Maine legislature just granted BIW a $45 million tax break last year. And in 2017, General Dynamics got a windfall tax cut from the Trump administration. And so, you know, they've been getting a lot of money from the taxpayers. And I think one thing that anybody who's watching this can do is to contact their elected officials and tell them to put pressure on General Dynamics, Bath Iron Works to come to a resolution with the union and give them a fair contract, because, you know, we've ponied up, we've supported that shipyard, and they need to live up to their promises to ensure that we are supporting good quality jobs for future generations of shipbuilders at that yard, and that we're not paying to bring in scabs from the deep south, which, by the way, are from places where COVID is spiking, it's surging, cases of positive cases, and these scabs are considered essential workers. And so, you know, they're exempt from these quarantine regulations and things like that. So it's important that, you know, people understand what's going on down there and contact their elected officials and say, this is not right. There is more that we can do as the public, and more that our elected officials can do to make sure that, you know, these workers are treated fairly. And by the way, this is also about raising the bar for all workers. You know, if we don't have good quality jobs that pay living wages in mid-coast Maine, that's going to lower the bar for all kinds of jobs. You know, unions set the standard, and that's what they've done historically. That's why wages have gone down over the past 40 years because of the decline in union members. And so we need to get that up, and we need to support the union brothers and sisters who are on strike right now.
Thanks. One of the things that I was bugged by was hearing this term essential workers being tossed around. And when I heard the term, I thought, yeah, so essential workers are the people who know how to build ships and have been doing this job for years and know what they're doing. And then I see the term subcontractors being brought in, and you know that that's just a cattle call, and some of these people might not have nearly the skills that our neighbors have. Any thoughts on this? What do they mean by essential workers? Mike.
Well, essential to them, I guess. You know, a lot of people were paying bonuses to essential workers. BIW never did. I worked through it. Children, some chose to take unpaid leave, and that, you know, that was something that they had to decide for themselves. But there was no, other than granting unlimited unpaid leave, that was all that BIW did.
Andy O'Brien from the AFL CIO. We're getting down to the end here, but I definitely would like to hear your thoughts on the I mean, when I went to the legislature, one thing I really didn't appreciate until I served on the Marine Resources Committee was how important the lobstering and the fishing industry is to the entire economy, not just the families of the fishermen, but the entire local economy. And I feel that same way about, I mean, I'm sure that's even more true in greater Bath, Brunswick, the Bath Iron Works and the employees who work there, and how they are such an essential part of our local economy. Here I am making a speech. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how this impacts in the greater economy of coastal Maine and really all of Maine.
Yeah, I mean, we've got 4,300 members of Local S6 that are on strike. And these workers come from every county in Maine, all 16 counties. So you have workers that are coming down from Aroostook County that are working at the shipyard, from out in Western Maine, from all over. And so, they're bringing those incomes back into their community and spending them. And, these, a lot of parts of Maine, it's really not easy to find a good paying blue-collar job with benefits. This is incredibly important to working class people in Maine that we have these jobs here. But for generations, they had to fight for it. There were strikes, local S6 strikes in 1976, in 1985, in 2000. And if they had backed down any of those times, we wouldn't see the jobs that are there today. And so, it's important that those jobs are there, but it's also important that other workers across the state understand that they can have power too. And, they can go to our website at maineaflcio.org, click the link, I want to start a union in my workplace, and we can hook you up with somebody who might be able to help you with that.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Andy O'Brien from the AFL CIO of Maine, for coming on Maine Challenge this week. And also a special thanks to you, Mike Melville of South Bristol, who's a member of Local 6 at Bath Iron Works. And thank you to all your fellow workers for the work they do, and good luck getting through this strike. And again, thank you very much to both of you for being a part of Maine Challenge. We appreciate your participation, and I hope this is helps get the word out to people who aren't necessarily down at BIW every day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Show your support for Maine Challenge and LCTV's programming. We're all about community. Please go to lctv.org to make a contribution. Your support makes us stronger together.